grab a drink. It's time for another episode of Off the Record, On the Rocks. Join Michael Toner and Ankarina Lara as we discuss the latest in all things Web3, AI, Metaverse, and crypto. Tune out the noise and turn up the signal as we pour ourselves into the future. Yeah. Better make mine a double.
Episode 63 and 66 are just pumping.
Love it.
Hey, here we are, though. This is episode 69. This is the last episode of the sixth season, last episode of 2023. Congratulations, we got here. We made it.
Yes, it is the last episode of the year, that last episode of season 6, episode 69, as we head into 2024, rounding out 2023. We're going to get to the latest and breaking news around BlackRock Bitcoin ETF news. We've got some Binance news, some Apple news to get to, and all the while, we're going to try to provide a little bit of a retrospective on everything that we've covered over the past year and what all of this means as we do head into 2024. I'll start with this news breaking today on the block that the BlackRock proposed spot Bitcoin ETF gets a ticker in latest filing with SEC, and it is just lining up. I mean, there weren't even tea leaves to read here. There was an actual schedule published of when this thing was going to get approved. It just had 4 extensions built into the timeline. And yes, they're going to get a ticker symbol. And yes, this Bitcoin ETF is coming online in early 2024. What's your take on this news?
I mean, and yes, the dates that we've looked at, if we just go check those dates again, the next date that's coming up, actually, interestingly, is the 22nd of December, which would be this Friday. We're recording on Tuesday, December 19th. The 22nd is Friday, and that's when the SEC is supposed to make a decision by. And more often than not, they tend to do that. If you remember, looking at those last dates that got blown, they wait until the day, and then they punt. So what I thought was interesting about this week cycle is that yesterday and today they're punting many days, 3 days, 4 days in advance of their own deadline. So either they all want to close up the books and get home for Christmas, or, let's talk about reading tea leaves a little more, separating them out. We know none of these things happen by accident, right? Timing is everything. So maybe there is still some news to break between now and the 22nd where maybe not everyone is kicked down the road, because there's nothing that says that each application wholesale.
That's
so
right.
Like, what if this news comes out that ARK Investments and Grayscale and all the other guys, okay, you guys are kicked. But look at today. Hey, BlackRock gets a ticker. How many more days we got? A few more days? What if I just snuck a little something in your stocking right before on what would be Christmas Eve observed, and maybe Gensler gets a nice little beard on and kind of fattens himself up a little bit, comes down your chimney and just is like, BlackRock's first, guys. But hey, don't worry, everyone's coming. You saw the schedule; they'll come next year. It would be really weird if they did that. But then again, we've seen weird things happen.
Think about then everybody goes home for the holidays. Yes, people are griping about it, but like you and I have talked about over the Thanksgiving holiday, they buried the $4 billion fine. By Monday, I couldn't even remember who had done the press conference. Imagine you get a BlackRock ETF approved, you head into Christmas, you're drinking wine, you're eating ham and mashed potatoes, you're coming back after New Year's. I mean, everybody takes 2 weeks. 2 weeks off by the time we get back. Oh yeah, those other applications, they're coming next week. A couple more weeks, guys. We're almost there.
Something else that we've talked about, which is, there is an argument that you'd want to have one go first and maybe call it something else. We talked about it as being a provisional. That was our prediction from many episodes back, which is, well, let's just not release all the hounds at once and then try to wrangle everybody, because everyone's application is a little bit different looking. Everyone has a different nuance. Some companies are looking for Bitcoin ETF. In the case of BlackRock, they want Bitcoin ETFs and Ethereum ETFs. They have a number of products. Other companies are more narrowly focused, right? Maybe there is a provisional approval that happens that says, okay, IBIT is the ticker. BlackRock got the ticker today. Hey, we're going to be trying out, with some of our institutional investors. Hey, retail guys, just chill by the fire. Enjoy the eggnog.
We got a couple of things we gotta iron
enjoy
out
the eggnog.
first.
We got a whole bunch of money to launder. and we need to get it all done before the first of the year next year. We got to get going now. So let's just kick everybody out. We'll get BlackRock in. We'll get the ticker, and maybe they start a little provisional thing with some guys we've heard of. Maybe a little Fidelity, maybe a little, little Michael Saylor, a little Microsys. Maybe the big guys who've been hanging around. Maybe Jamie Dimon can kind of get in on that too. Everyone can get a little bit, and then once everybody's in, building on a story we covered last time, what did BlackRock do last week? They updated their filing to say that they should not need to have only crypto on the books, because for the security and safety of the retail investors, you would need cash on the books in case of a run on the spot ETFs. So if you're in the business of basically making it so that you don't even need crypto to sell crypto, that's the first box. Check. What's the second thing I need? I need 2 to 3 to 4 weeks. I don't know. Give me some runway. All right. We'll get you done on Christmas Eve.
Retail investors, they usually take off around the holidays. We can buy you a few weeks. No, I think you're exactly right. When I hear news coming from Gensler this past week about the existing frameworks, I don't know if you saw this press release, I think maybe from last Friday, that the existing frameworks, that they're good enough, guys. I mean, it's this random press release that he puts out that says, like, we already have the rules for this. And what you just described of, if you're in the business of using cash to buy crypto, but then it has to be traded back in for cash. And I'm looking at the block post. So this is the article from today from Sarah Wynn at the block, from yesterday, December 18th. And one of the quotes from Bloomberg intelligence analyst says, BlackRock has gone cash only, end quote. That's basically a wrap. Debate over. In kind will have to wait. It's all about getting ducks in row before holidays. Good sign, period. That to me means that BlackRock said, okay, SEC. The rule is we got to have the cash on the books. That's the only thing. That's the only worry. We got cash. We got $4 billion. How much you need?
We got cash on the books, below the books, inside the books. This whole library is just money. It's all money in here. Yeah, so they figured it out. They knocked out the bad exchanges, the bad actors, called them Ponzi schemes, dragged them in, are going to have them in court next year. A perfect showcase of all the rogues gallery of bad people. Get them out. Then, what's the problem? You need a surveillance partner for your spot Bitcoin ETF application, and the only surveillance partner can be Coinbase. So BlackRock says, well, what if we don't have crypto? Then they don't have to surveil us because we have cash and we're already surveilling ourselves. And they're like, oh, that makes
we like that idea.
I didn't think
it's a horse of a different color.
Let's go, guys. Okay, so now we're just gonna get the halls just decked out with boughs of holly and cash and all kinds of just beautiful food. Everyone's gonna love it all through the holidays. And then when we come back, remember we talk about coming back, and we know you said it's a couple of weeks. It always is that week right after the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, which I think is somewhere in the middle of January this year. So look for that, that Tuesday, whatever date that is, right after. That's when everyone resumes. And boy, then we're going to see the juggernaut rolling downhill, because then all we have in front of us are 2 more dates of approvals of Bitcoin ETFs, as well as like 2 or 3 trials with Sam Bankman-Fried, with CZ from Binance. And there's one other trial I'm forgetting. And then we have the halving, which will make Bitcoin geometrically more difficult to mine. All the confluence of those things at once. So yeah, if you want to
reducing
kind of
supply, increasing demand. I mean, a simple economics equation here to see that, not financial advice, but you don't have enough Bitcoin. I'm already seeing price predictions, and it does sound sort of crazy, but all the tea leaves that we've been reading, everything that we've been covering in 2023, we're reading press releases from the SEC.gov website. We are not making this shit up. We are doing the research. We are reading what BlackRock filings are. I'm also seeing here that these other, the Bitcoin ETFs, 21 shares and Wisdom Tree, they filed amended S1 filings on Monday. Oh, that's weird. How'd they find out about BlackRock getting their ticker symbol? Oh, that's because they said they're going to do cash only. Oh, that's what we have to do. The requirement trickles, and then these guys have to amend. And if they wait a day to amend, then they're a day late and $1 short. And
you're already de-dollarizing your entire, consumer base. No, but what you just said, it's like you captured it. Supply demand. It's simple marketing and simple economics. And apparently all of the applicants for these Bitcoin ETFs, all of them, with the exception of BlackRock, I guess were just not big enough, not consequential enough. Maybe didn't have enough cash, maybe didn't have enough crypto, maybe didn't have whatever that you needed. Because clearly, like you said, when BlackRock shows up and Fink starts knocking things over, in the porcelain shop, then suddenly everyone else is just looking through the windows and saying, "Oh, we got to do that now? Okay, guys, change it. What do we got to do now? Okay, change it." And suddenly they're the guys leading the charge. So they clearly are connected. I mean, if you have the most money under management of any company in the world, I suppose you by default are the most connected because you're pulling every string you could possibly imagine across the globe. So when it comes to you deciding, hey, we're going to start something new, a new financial product, they're almost the dream choice because it looks like it was their idea when
they're
they
the
came and said,
choice.
hey,
we
use cash, right? In America, you guys like that. You bankers like that. And they're like, oh, yeah, we love that. You're speaking my language. So, it seems like a little funny business.
First.
Little
It's
funny
exactly
business.
right.
And we'll see. I still think there's going to be some precious, special position that BlackRock will enjoy, whether that's just an outright first and everyone else is last, or if it's more of like a test kind of a thing where we're going to try it first, then we'll do a shadow thing or whatever. They're going to, I think, couch it some way, but it really does feel like they're going to come out ahead leading this charge in a way that's completely unfair to everybody else who filed years ago.
I don't know how to make this leap, but just as everybody is kind of here at the end of the year, making sure everything is about ducks in a row for 2024. I think that's maybe the connection piece here, which is this news from Apple dumping Goldman Sachs, moving and claiming, quote, that Chase Bank is the ideal replacement. So literally dropping their high yield savings banking partner for Chase Bank and saying that they're the better partner. I don't know what to make of this other than everybody's getting their ducks in a row for 2024, and Apple probably knows something we don't know about either Chase Bank's ability to process real-time bank transactions, Chase Bank's ability to access maybe new asset classes that Goldman didn't or won't be first to. I don't know how to make sense of it other than it does feel like a soured Goldman relationship. You got two iconic brands, Apple and Goldman, parting ways. Chase comes in as, I don't know, they feel like the young hip banking partner. I don't know.
Yeah, this one's another one of those timing stories, I think, because we're not going to know all the details, their dirty details, but we know that a bank and a bank and a bank are all three different things. And in terms of, they all, hold money, supposedly, but they all have different technology arms and different products that might be more interesting to, say, a Silicon Valley hardware or, say, software company. So when I say that, when you look at the timing of when they got together, I want to say 2018, 2019. 2019 was when they formalized their relationship. And remember, the world changes basically right after that, dramatically. And so they didn't snap their fingers and get it going in 2019. They were probably talking for years. They're building this whole thing. But one of the things I do know about Goldman Sachs is they're not exactly the first name that comes to mind when you think of like a retail banking partner. When someone hears the words Goldman Sachs, the first thing I think of is investment banking.
Yeah.
I don't think go to the ATM, the Goldman ATM, and get money out.
Mm-mm.
So when it comes to Chase, what I do know about Chase is fully built out across what's called the not the micro payment processing, blah, blah, blah. It's called MasterCard's MasterPass solution, I want to say, which is, so MasterCard is a unique company, unlike Visa. People think they're the same. MasterCard makes 85% of its money not off of credit cards from retail customers. They make it off of banking systems, banking passes, enabling small businesses, point of purchase. That's where they make their money. Visa, by contrast, is all credit cards for you and me to go buy Christmas presents. So if you think about it that way, and you know that they want this to be the Apple Pay system, which is going to run on the MasterPass system, which is going to work with every single retailer, then it makes total sense because Chase is 100% running on the MasterCard network for its credit cards.
Interesting.
So they piggyback with them. So when you think about it, it's like, maybe Goldman was the right, at the time, it felt like the right cachet. Because I know that they were keeping, I want to say Goldman Sachs is actually the bank that holds Apple's money in the bank. So like the billions of dollars that Apple uses to go buy companies, they call Goldman and be like, let's go buy that company. They're like, great. So I think it probably was an easy, natural thing of like, hey, we'll partner on this. Then pandemic, then they realized behavior like, oh no, we got to get out to the MasterCard network because that's global. And we got to like get for real retail. So to me, it just felt like they did the easy choice. And then pandemic made them make the hard choices, which is like, hey man, I know it's almost Christmas, but you're fine. And now we're going to go with Chase. That's kind of how I read it. It's actually going to be way better for everybody if Goldman just steps out because, yeah, maybe let them do your savings account or whatever, like the Apple staking. Maybe that's good for them. But how about you give me a credit card that works anywhere I go to buy $3 worth of tacos at the place, right? And that's going to be where I think the big win's coming from, I think. Micropayments in the metaverse and the real world.
I mean, yes, 100%. I love this quote from Mark Gurman at Bloomberg. Basically, Apple's long-anticipated breakup with Goldman Sachs Group, its main financial services partner, is now underway. I love that because talk about the narrative. You and I, we caught wind of this, that there was some executive who went on a stage months ago who said that the relationship was starting to sour. When you look back and you do the retro, for this reporter to call it out as the long anticipated, it does feel like that we've been covering it and talking about it here, that this was not a surprise. And if you're Apple and you're in the business of global public relations, you can have no surprises. So the laying of that framework, the laying of that narrative over the last 6 months, even to the point of like in the quote news coverage of losing one partner, it's immediately referencing the replacement partner. So if you're a client, if you're an Apple Pay user, or you have that savings account, think about you have no worry, you have no fear, you're not afraid of, oh shit, what does this mean for me? Because look, they already got a replacement, you already know who it is. So that's interesting to me, just from a PR and communications perspective.
And also consider that when you talk about like Goldman Sachs as almost like a pawn, to use maybe a real dirty word, in Apple's chess game. Because remember, the reason that everyone was going berserk and they thought that like Goldman were geniuses as a result of the halo effect from Apple, to the point to where literally everyone in my family is asking me like, well, I should get the Apple savings card, right? Look at these. It's like a 10x on my current savings. Like, how are they doing it? Should I do it? I'm like, I don't know how they're doing it. They're probably just hemorrhaging a bunch of money. They call it customer acquisition cost, or CAC. How much is your CAC? How much does it cost to get a customer? Oh, about 5.48%. Okay, well, that's over time, that seems fine. So what ends up happening is that Goldman ends up underwriting so many just insane interest rate, like loans basically, that based on, I'm sure, their inability to do the engineering work that Apple's requiring, plus all the money they're just losing on interest to all these people who are legit just buying their services for the extra percent, the extra order of magnitude, that they're like, oh, damn. And now they're going to cut them and just leave them holding the bag of all this staking debt and then move over to Chase. We're like, hey, everyone loves credit cards, right? Like, God, all the savings guys, bull, they're such a bore. Let's go buy stuff.
Are you just calling Apple a rug pull? I'm confused here.
It kind of just feels like there was a real, remember this really beautiful silver set of earrings that I talked to you about last year? I have a gold brooch today, and it's way better. So make sure you buy that. That's what it's come down to. Yeah, I think Goldman got totally reamed on this one. Chase just makes more sense. I mean, again, it's Apple. It's micropayments in the metaverse. Am I using my Goldman Sachs investment account to pay that, or my Chase credit card? It's the latter.
I want to piggyback off of this Apple story. We started to talk about this at the end of last week's episode, talking about social media, talking about Apple. I think the impetus really was the regulatory market, specifically around the App Store, when Apple had originally launched the App Store, and that the regulators were like, what are you doing with that? You can't launch the App Store. That's a new place for transactions. Of course, as Apple steps into this new immersive environment coming with Apple Vision Pro coming also in early 2024, that they clearly have had to solve for some of this regulation. And I think that's the jumping off point of this new world that's being created, while simultaneously the existing worlds, the existing 2.0 social media worlds, getting perhaps a bit of a Web3 upgrade. And I mean that in a couple of different ways. I mean that from an artificial intelligence perspective, applying AI into these social networks. I want to talk about Snapchat. I want to talk about Meta. I want to talk about what Zuckerberg is doing and demoing with AI, what the AI means for Apple Metaverse. But some of this is, I think, bringing us to a bit of a prediction, looking and reading those tea leaves through 2023, a full annual retrospective, if you will, of everything that we've made sense with, almost bringing us right back to social media 2.0, getting this massive upgrade. Like it's already started to happen, but the tipping point is coming very soon with on-chain transactions, real-world value exchange happening inside of Roblox, TikTok marketplace, the way influencers buy and sell. We started to talk about the changing definition of ownership and what this means even for legacy brands to be able to empower and pay royalties to influencers who help sell their product. I'm giving a long intro here to this is what I see the marketplace becoming in 2024. It's got massive implications for social media. Maybe we start with Zuckerberg. We start with Facebook, call it the original, the OG social network, aside from MySpace, which never rebounded. But Zuckerberg's been out of the news. We're not hearing about him. He's doing product demos. He's actually showing off his tech. Facebook's having a bit of a resurgence, even from a marketing perspective. A lot of content creators going back to Facebook because of a supply and demand. Content creators kind of abandoned Facebook over the last year and have gone to TikTok, and all these other channels are now coming back. There's still an audience there. What does all this stuff mean? Blockchain, crypto, Web3, AI, point it right at Meta. What's your take? What does it mean for 2024?
Well, the Meta, to take it back to Meta has made a lot of noise this year. I say that, I mean, they have come out and they have said they are not doubling, but tripling down or quadrupling down, or whatever the number of downs is now, on the Metaverse. We know they changed their name to Meta to really show us how serious they are. And then they, talked about how much money has been currently invested in research and development for their headset, their Quests and their next generation virtual reality. We've learned how much they've lost in the process. I want to say, it's like billions of dollars a month. But then we learned, we're going to also, reinvest 20 billion more in this. We really are committed to this, et cetera. So we've heard them make a lot of noise about how much money they're putting behind it. Then secondly, we heard them put a little squeak. I'm not going to say it was like a big roar, but they kind of squeaked just right before the Apple event, which was called Wanderlust, where they debuted the new Vision Pro goggles. And then saying about how their products are going to do this, X, Y, and Z, and all these things they announced from Meta's perspective. Then Apple had its event, and then Meta came out some number of weeks later saying how they're changing a whole bunch of things. And so did Google, and everyone's like, oh, Apple's doing that? The analog is like Apple right now is kind of acting like the BlackRock when it comes to spot Bitcoin ETFs. Apple moves first, everybody else changes their whole PRD. Their whole product, development document is adjusted because of what Cupertino does from their infinite circle. And that's, to me, is another thing where it's like, and then the third part, right? First, how much money we're spending, how much money we're investing. Second, how we're going to try to scoop the big gorillas news every chance we can and fail fabulously at it because their product's not going to be as good. But then the third thing is Zuckerberg just loves saying yes to come and talk to Congress. And he's been someone who they've enjoyed now many times up there, squirming in his chair while they grill him on all kinds of things. And that's going back even to the painful ones where they're asking him what a like means or a dislike or a thumbs down and what's the value of a like and are you tracking all my likes and all these things. And so I think that when it comes to and then the last thing is you look at the demo itself. You talk about this guy out there always showcasing these demos. None of it seems that interesting to me, when it comes to the visualization of it. Now, people who haven't ever picked up a headset before might put it on and say, wow, this is cool. But if you have been someone like me who's looked at headsets going back 10, 15 years from first video gaming implementations to forward, it really isn't better than, say, the Sony 3D, gaming goggles that came out a decade ago. So it looks like Zuckerberg and not a video game character, but is that what the metaverse is? Is seeing him talk sitting next to you? So my take on it is that they are treading water. They're holding too many cinder blocks while they're trying to do it. And they're just starting to get themselves to where their nose is starting to bump above the surface. And they're starting to choke a little bit because they only have so much money and the shareholders only have so much patience. And that's going to steer us into the next, AI thing, which is, well, how is this during this election cycle? I'll throw it back to you, where we know Facebook has been under pressure from everyone to stop running the propaganda ads, to stop the fake news bulletins, to stop your Alex Joneses from just smearing conspiracy everywhere. All of these issues with the safety of people and the content, that is going to be where I think that's the hill they're going to die on, because they're talking about everything but that. And unfortunately, the whole world wants to talk about that next year. As we talk about spending presidential dollars, I mean, we're going to have Facebook be a new battleground in the metaverse for competing misinformation. It's going to be as bad as any modern war.
What you just described sounds to me a lot like effective altruism. And I know for the listeners, like, I'm pulling this term out. It's not out of thin air. This is coming back to OpenAI, Sam Altman, Helen Toner from the OpenAI board. When you dug into the details, the dirty little headline that barely squeaked by when you Googled Helen Toner, no, there's no relation. Helen, if you're listening, please DM me. I'd like to figure out what our heritage is. But the fact that she was advocating for this effective altruism, I remember specifically asking you when I saw this, I was like, what the hell is this? And what it means in terms of artificial intelligence. And now I'm connecting these dots between what we just described around social media and the mental health issues that it has brought, the political unrest that it has and has the potential to bring. What we're talking about is the algorithm, the AI, whatever we want to call it. Is it inherently setting out to do good? And that is the story. I'll give another shout out to Sharon Goldman at VentureBeat. She is all over this story. This is from an article today titled "The Widening Web of Effective Altruism in AI Security." Sharon Goldman from VentureBeat, December 19th. So this is from literally today, talking about that if you're not looking for the effective altruism influence, you're missing the story. And I think that brings me to this prediction of it's why you're seeing the ads. I mean, the fix is already in. Facebook's already been found guilty. They know they had an impact. Instagram's algorithm had an impact on the mental health of young females.
Mm-hmm.
They're already being held accountable for that. They're having to run ads to say, we fucked up, we screwed up. That's part of the punishment oftentimes with these kinds of government fines of you have to run advertising. You know, when Procter and Gamble with the Tide Pods is like it's a silly example, but when they run those ads that talk about these Tide Pods are dangerous for young kids, it's because they got in trouble for it. They got in trouble for selling a product that was inherently dangerous. That's a consumer product, CPG example, but point that same thing at social media. Point it back to Facebook, point it back to Twitter, and point it back to TikTok. These new rules, I think, are going to be about who creates the content. Do we know who they are? Are they KYC'd? Are they on the chain? Are they paying $8 to Elon Musk to identify their checking account, that we know that they're a human? And if so, if they're a human and they're spouting off hate, or they're making offensive comments, or they're putting in racist comments, it's on chain, right? It's now an action that can be measured, because now we have an AI tool capable of locking in on that language, that context, that sentiment analysis that you could never get at 10 years ago is now solvable with AI. And I think that's where these social media networks are going to undergo a dramatic shift in how they get regulated. Apple, I know, is even coming up with new parental controls, like about how you give access to your kids. and how you sort of have custody, these new terms of ownership and custody of who owns the data. Take where I'm going with this. Help me make sense of social media is going to need to adapt to a real-time payments environment with on-chain actions that can be tracked and attributed back to your social profile.
Yes, yes, all that you just said, and I'll build on that, which is the EA, as it's referred to, and we're not talking about Electronic Arts, the game company. When we say EA and you hear EA now and through next year, it's effective altruism, which is what is it's a sometimes a difficult concept to understand. So to break it down real simple for our audiences, if you're in the business of coding algorithms, humans are the ones defining the code, and as AI has become more and more powerful, looking at large language models, you mentioned sentiment analysis, which literally used to be the buzzword from 10 years ago, right? Is the review of my product positive or negative based on some keywords. But really all it's doing is looking around, scanning Mad Libs and giving it some kind of attribution in terms of positive or negativity. But now as we get to a point where the machines are thinking a little bit better and learning from their mistakes, etc., then you need to ensure that the algorithm that is going to be applied to your project, whatever it's called, is going to be effectively altruistic, meaning the machine, the artificial intelligence, the robot is going to have all human interests in mind first and foremost. And if you look today at the current boards of content regulation at Twitter, who used to be a panel of humans who are writing different things, and Meta and Facebook, they haven't been very good at it because of all the things you just cited. Number of suicides resulting from body dysmorphia issues through the ceiling. You have people, live streaming death on Facebook Live and Instagram Live. Like the level of bad has gone to a point where there's giant hearings about it, and they're dragging up all those books and all these records and saying, hey, Mr. Zuckerberg, your entire team brought you this big red flag 2 years ago, and you didn't do anything. They said that young people are spending too much time looking at their feeds, and they're making decisions that are not in their own better interest in their health. They're making bad decisions, and it's your fault. It's our fault. And no answer, no answer. And so now we're being brought to we are today where social media is going to be skewered next year. And the AI in this case is going to need to be that dynamic safety buffer that you're describing. When you talk about custodial behavior, when you're a custodian of someone's account, when you're the custodian of someone's crypto, these are all words you're going to keep hearing, this custodial versus non-custodial. Well, you need to have ownership when it's your own children. And if you give ownership of decision-making to parents, and parents have to make a decision as to what their kids can or can't see, well, then you've now offloaded you've indemnified in many ways the social network from the wrongdoing, because you put it on the parent to make the call. Like if I decide my 11-year-old can go see an R-rated film, it's my decision. If he ends up having nightmares for the next week, that's my problem. But the MPAA and the rules say, hey, we put a score on this thing, so that kid can't come by himself and look at it. So imagine now you have that MPAA AI, that algorithm across social networks. It's brought to you by, let's just say, Apple or Google. It's brought to you by someone who is not the maker of the social network. You might call it a third party or a watchdog, because up until now, all these social networks have been allowed to regulate themselves in their quote unquote walled gardens. Well, now we're busting a hole in the walled garden. We're walking in the front door and we're saying, okay, I have the custodial right over these 3 children accounts or whoever in my phone. And when they download TikTok, and when they download Facebook, and when they download Instagram, and they download Snapchat, unbeknownst to them, the feed is regulated. The feed is being, elements that are negative are being obfuscated from me, because I'm not an 18-year-old. I'm a 12-year-old. And I think what we're going to see now is that application of 100% social media regulation coming across everybody. I mean, again, Meta will probably be one of the first because they're the most obvious. But my last one, I'll kick to you to kind of bring it to a little bit of a geopolitical point. But it seems strange that we haven't done this yet. Now, you could argue that maybe AI wasn't powerful enough But honestly, we could have made things more stringent. Someone could have reacted to the email memo 2 years ago. But what's new this year about social media? Well, there's a new social media platform. It's called TikTok. Why is TikTok any different than all the rest of these? Well, it's owned by China. It's owned by the Chinese government. And if you're in the business of politically battling your frenemy, China, then God, we don't even have to make it about America and Zuckerberg and Facebook. We can just say social media generally and couch it as a security safety for all citizens' data. And now you don't have to throw shade on the American entrepreneur. You can claim, the enemies abroad are forcing our regulatory behaviors. And it makes it a much cleaner story, I think, for the American public to appreciate.
I got so many threads to go down. One, I'll go back to this VentureBeat article when we're talking about sentiment analysis and the scoring being applied, and sort of that is the secret sauce, right? Of that the sophisticated LLM can understand what the language is saying. And that is one of the pieces from this VentureBeat article talking about the threat of opportunistic criminals to accessing the weights of the most sophisticated and powerful LLMs is alarming, because if an attacker got access to the file, that is the entire network. That the model now becomes the secret sauce of how you can understand that context. And I think about TikTok, and I think about it got banned by the U.S. government. Military employees can't have it on their phones. Submarine Navy men, and women had it on their phones in submarines. It's tracking them. They had to turn it off. But think about the AI data scraping, not just about what the person said or where they were from or where they're going, but were they happy? Were they sad? Were they emotionally stable? All of those things that we now know effectively through Facebook and Zuckerberg that are 100% possible through this technology. It can manipulate a human brain to affect their emotional state. Now that effective altruism becomes super important to understanding how I'm scoring things. Because if the robot has to be good, it has to be good, 51% of the time?
Well, it has to be good also in the cultural context of where you live.
Right.
Because your effective altruistic AI in America might be different than mine in the UK or Xi Jinping's in China, or the Germans, which we all know. They're the ones who, there's some countries who have taken massive steps to prevent technology from infiltrating their borders. Let's not forget, the great cookie debate of Europe, and how Europe said, hey, you can't use cookies to track us. And now the world, like you said, the opportunistic criminal, you don't need cookies. You just need some kid on social media. And now I know exactly where you are and where you're headed with that. And it's not just the text. We're talking a lot about sentiment. We're talking now also about images and videos that are being posted.
Right.
Because that really now is the AI trick, is I'm in my feed seeing things. Instagram is a visual medium. So now the AI needs to be able to real time look at posts and decide, is this appropriate for 11-year-olds versus 16 versus 20?
Oh, even more important, is this appropriate for you? Like, now the onus is on the social network to know, like, I'll just go right there to a mental health state, which is to say, like, if it knows enough about your mental state to know that this picture for you is triggering or is dangerous, that's where I could see a whole new level of, then I should have custodial ownership over how I get to train the algorithm, which is that exact discussion that Sharon's covering in the article about, well, then how much transparency is there going to be in the model? Are we going to get to see how effectively altruistic it is? Tell me, grade it, show it to me. Is Facebook's more altruistic than Google's, than is Apple's? I think that will become really interesting to know, of like the worlds that I step into. It makes me really understand why Elon wanted Twitter, and he's applying Grok and LLM to the real-time Twitter feed, is because you can get the truth out of the algorithm can get to the truth.
Hey man, now you're talking big. Well, but I think part of that too is that what this new regulation should do Now, I'm not going to say that I'm not going to say this is good or bad. None of the stuff we're talking about for our listeners, don't take it like the two of us have some kind of an opinion as to what's good or bad. But it seems like what should happen if there is going to be a path that we're barreling down next year, which is they're going to be regulating the kind of content that young people are allowed to consume or engage with on social networks or on the internet generally, but called social networks just to make it simple. If that's going to happen, which I believe it will, and it should, because there's clearly kids seeing too many things they're not supposed to see, we got to do something. Then it would probably be the onus on the U.S. as its own altruistic or own effectively altruistic AI police to say that this applies to Americans. Like this is an AI filter that applies to Americans. If we shouldn't be in the business, we, the American government, shouldn't be in the business of telling what someone should be able to see or not see in Singapore or someone else. Now, I know everyone loves the U.S. We're the world police when it comes to the military. But we also know what that cost is, right? Are we really going to be telling the world what 12-year-olds should be seeing? Like, that seems strange. But let's just say we say, okay, we're going to show Americans what we believe. As Americans, in our culture, if you're a citizen, you pay taxes, you need to behave by these rules. And we're not going to let you watch someone throw up on Instagram because they ate too much dinner and they want to get skinnier. They're just not going to do it, right? Unless you're 18 and an adult. So if that's true, then it's going to apply to all the social networks. So I think we might see another one of these. Well, God, if you want to download TikTok from the Google Play Store or the Apple, App Store, then TikTok has to be okay with the fact that there is a regulatory, effective altruistic API endpoint that the U.S. government will access across every single one of these silos and enforce so that you can't. Because look, if you're an influencer, look, we're both influencers. But if we are influencers and I want to make a post to talk about this podcast, well, guess what? We do that on Instagram. We do that on Facebook. We do that on Snapchat. We do it everywhere because that's what you do. You're an influencer. You want to sell your makeup and your products. You post everywhere. You may have different, styles, but ultimately you want to have the biggest footprint you can. So knowing that, can you imagine the gamification that would occur if there were nuances in the way that each of the different social networks were regulating the content? It would be really insane to try to keep up with that, and still people would see the bad content. So I think what we're seeing is going to be like the hammer coming down. And again, it was hard, if not impossible, for Congress and the American government over the last 2 decades to just force Silicon Valley to do what they wanted. I remember way back the first time they said, we're going to put a stamp on every email. The USPS would like a stamp to pay for an email to be sent because it's going to end up tanking the post office, this thing called email. That was the beginning of the fear. And then it's just gone along from there. And there's coalitions and there's tribunals, there's groups who come out and who regulate themselves. Silicon Valley regulates itself. We at Twitter have a content review board. We're banning this handle. Remember that was like all the big talk was 3 cheers for us because we're the content police, said the Twitter board. 3 cheers for us. We're the Instagram police, said some random people on Instagram. Now it's no. If you're American and you are going to be in the business of being on social media, A, you got to be 13 because we already know Facebook's been tricky with that. B, if you're not 13, we can create an account, but your parents have to be the custodian. And no matter where you go, if I post my weird post, you will not see it because it knows your age. As you said, your KYC, know your customer. And we know that we're never going to show Michael Toner's niece the wrong thing. Never show my nephew the wrong thing because we, the parents, are the custodians to it. It's going to be a massive street fight, and there are going to be court orders, and I think it's going to be just an ugly thing. The networks are not going to like it. They're not going to like it.
I'll put a fine tip on that. The fact that we just went from social media to KYC, and you somewhere in this episode called a bank is a bank is a bank, or is not a bank is not a bank is not a bank. But Apple is a bank. Meta is a bank. Instagram is a bank. The value might be the content. The transaction is the like. But at the end of the day, those social networks are going to be held accountable for knowing who it is they're serving the content to and who's on the receiving end of that transaction. That they're going to, the network itself will be responsible for both sides of the transaction to bring it back to a general ledger. That to me requires blockchain and requires AI So shout out to everybody building at the intersection of blockchain and AI as we head into 2024. We just took you down a path of what that's going to look like for these legacy social media brands. It's in the tea leaves. Watch what Apple's doing. Watch where Meta and Facebook are posturing in terms of their television commercials. The ads that you're seeing are telling you exactly where this is going. We didn't even get to Mastodon and Threads, but the reason that getting into market was about testing this ownership of your identity. Now, I'll go there. Meta has a solution that says I can now own my profile. I own the data. I own the username. I own the birth date. We're not sharing that with outside advertisers. Advertising is about to change fundamentally. Marketing, cookieless world, the way we reach these customers, it will come back around to building communities around your product to know who you're selling to and know who's buying from you. Even if it's not a tokenized security, you're still going to be responsible for both sides of that transaction. I'll get your reaction, and then we'll shut it down for 2023.
Well, so my only reaction is that we see these patterns, and maybe just to step like way back and look at this from a really different perspective, is the patterns that we see through the transition from no internet to Web 1, from Web 1 to Web 2, and now what we are really calling Web 2 to Web 3. There's some people who say that Web 2.5 was really social media. I can see that. It really did change behaviors, even though the technologies themselves really didn't. And so there's an argument for calling that 2.5, maybe social. But 3.0 really is this new world you're describing, the ledger, the intersection of AI and blockchain. And what I think is going to be what the main Web 2 companies, Web 2.5, Web 2, which are the current websites and current social networks, they're starting to already behave like Web 3 and AI intersected companies when they're not actually there yet. And what I mean that is when the content itself that exists on the Web 2 platform, Meta or Instagram, starts to look and feel like the content that's available on Web 3 platforms, that's where we're going to have this really interesting and weird swirl. It might last a while because before all these social media companies go fully blockchain, there's going to be all kinds of AI generated content, photos and videos on the Web 2 platform. And just to leave it for everyone, pay attention. Already in China, there is a news anchor named Ren Xiaorong. And Ren Xiaorong is a completely AI-generated news anchor who does state media outlets on People's Daily. And in 2024, early, there's a company called Channel One. It's based out of Los Angeles. It just opened up. And they're going to be running a 100% AI anchor generated news network. So let's just digest this for a second as you get your hot toddy ready for the holidays. Is we're going to be consuming real news from a fake news anchor, or it's going to be it's going to be a transition where we're going to have to believe that a deep fake is actually a deep real. It's not a fake, it's real news. It just happens to be a fake person saying it, but we're going to be okay with it because it's not a fake person that I recognize. And that's going to be how then they're going to start to parse what you can and can't see. It is going to have to be image-based, way more than text-based, because the future of the content itself has already moved to the next generation. And that's why they're so woefully underprepared. And like you said, then it goes back to that fractional ownership. If I post a fake news anchor giving me real news and it tracks 1 million likes and I get a check, does anyone get a fractional ownership of that because they gave me a like on it? Because it isn't me, it's my creation. It's my creation. Is it real? Sounds like weird science.
It is going to need to keep track of who is creating the value. And I think that's like such a hard definition to come up with. I'm excited for what's to come in 2024. I'm now excited going into the next couple of days. If we have to pull an emergency Christmas Eve episode, let's do it.
I'm available.
I will hold that. I will reserve for an emergency 2023 episode. If we start season 7, here's to the listeners who are sticking with us. If we start season 7 before January 1, you're going to want to listen to that episode, because now you've got me thinking there could be a black swan called BlackRock, and it be going up. I don't know what we call that.
It was the night before Christmas, and all through the house, not a creature was stirring except for BlackRock's ETF, who's marching up the front step in 2x2 cover formation.
Damn, they work on Christmas Eve at the SEC? Holy smokes, they never quit. Always grinding.
Always grinding. Look at that Gensler's face, man. That guy's got energy for years. He's never stopping.
All right, sir. Happy holidays. Merry
Happy
Christmas.
holidays.
Happy New Year. We'll do it again soon.
All the best to you and your family. Looking forward to starting season 7 with a bang. Great talking to you.
That's all the time we have for this episode of Off the Record, On the Rocks. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. See you next time for more news and all things crypto and Web3.